जस्ट पंजाबी देखते हुए सारे दर्शकों को मेरे वालों प्यार भरी सत श्री अकाल। तुहाडा स्वागत प्रोग्राम अज दा मुद्दा दे विच मैं तुहाडी होस्ट आशमिता सारिਆਂ ਨੂੰ इस शाम के प्रोग्राम दे विच एक बारी फिर निघा स्वागत करते हैं। आई हैव अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी फॉर यू टुडे। बहुत ही खास प्रोग्राम लैके तुहाडे नाल हाजिर होए हां। इस स्टोरी नूं असीं पिछले कुछ हफ्तियां तो फॉलो कर रहे हैं एंड साडी अपनी रिसर्च तो बाद असीं ये तुहाडे नाल अज पेश करन जोगे बने बिकॉज इट इज़ अ कॉम्प्लिकेटेड स्टोरी। खास करके जदों एकोनॉमिक फाइनैंशियल ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਟਾਈਮ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਕਰਨੀ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਨ ਫੈਕਟ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੁਝ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੀ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇਨ ਫੈਕਟ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਨੇ जो कि पिछले सिर्फ कुछ सालों तो ही एग्जिस्ट करता है फाइनेंस वर्ल्ड दे नाल जुड़े हुए है बट दे कंडक्ट रिसर्च इज़ वैल। उन्हां दा नाम हैगा हिंडनबर्ग रिसर्च ग्रुप। शायद तुसी ये नाम पिछले कुछ दिनों दे विच खबरां दे विच सुनिया होए पढ़िया होए बिकॉज ये लगता तो हैगा हिंडनबर्ग अमेरिकन ग्रुप हैगा नेम्ड आफ्टर ए हिस्टोरिकल डिजास्टर इन द अर्ली 1900s ड्यूरिंग वॉर टाइम। ਇਹਦਾ इस प्रोग्राम दे विच मैंशन असी क्यों कर रहे हैं बिकॉज हिंडनबर्ग रिसर्च ग्रुप ने कुछ 2 साल ला के एक रिसर्च रिपोर्ट put together ਕੀਤੀ 100 something pages ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ extreme detail ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਗੌਤਮ ਅਦਾਨੀ ਅਤੇ ਅਡਾਨੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਨੇ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ largest financial fraud in corporate history ever commit ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। The largest con in corporate history। ਇਹ ਲਫ਼ਜ਼ ਵਰਤੇ ਗਏ ਹੈ हिंडनबर्ग रिसर्च ग्रुप वालों इस रिपोर्ट बारे। इन फैक्ट जो ये रिपोर्ट कुछ हफ्ते पहले ब्रेक हुई इमीडिएटली अडानी स्टॉक डिग पिया। It forced people to look at the growth of that stock। In fact अगर तुसी गौतम अदानी दी net worth दी गल ही करो over the last 2-3 years it's grown hundreds of percentage points। जो इन्हां दी कंपनीज हैगियां कंग्लोमरेट हैगा अडानी ग्रुप they have grown in the thousands of percentage points in only a couple of years। and Hindenburg Research Group ये allege करदा है कि ये growth बिल्कुल fraud सीगा। in fact the detail with which Hindenburg lists the operation कि किस तरह गौतम अदानी ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੰਪਨੀਜ਼ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਨੇ एक इन्ने वड्डे लेवल ते ये स्कीम रची है जिहदे विच hundreds of shell companies जो पैसा आले दुआले मूव कर दियां सारी इन्हां दे हेठ इन्हां दे कहण ते इस पैसे नूं एक इहो ਜਿਹੇ तरीके दे नाल मूव करिए जिहदे नाल इन्वेस्टर्स नूं पूरी दुनिया नूं सरकारां नूं ये धोखा दिता गया कि इस ग्रुप दी नैट वर्थ इन्हां दी वैल्यू ज़्यादा सीगी। Now once again this is an extremely detailed report। 100 कुछ पेजेस दी ये रिपोर्ट सीगी। ਇਹਦਾ ਜਵਾਬ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਅਡਾਨੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਨੇ ਲਗਭਗ 400 पेजेस ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਰਿਪੋर्ट ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਐਂਡ ਇਹ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਅਟੈਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਗਰੋਥ ਉੱਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਅਟੈਕ ਹੈਗਾ। of course Hindenburg responded and said ਕਿ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲਿਸਟ ਸੈਂਟੀਮੈਂਟਸ स्टोक कर लो जिन्ना मर्जी तुसी लोकां नूं भड़का लो कि एंटी इंडिया फलाना फलाना you have not answered the questions we have raised about your companies and your wealth। उन्होंने ये साफ जवाब दिता कि साडे allegations दा जवाब तुसी दवो ए ना कहो कि असी एंटी इंडिया हैगे that this is just what the research what the evidence states। so of course इस explosive reporting ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ stock markets ਤੇ ਵੀ ਫਰਕ ਪਿਆ but most importantly this is affecting India's image as a rising superpower। in fact ਕੁਝ economic experts ਦੱਸਦੇ ਕਿ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਟਰੈਕ ਤੇ ਹੈਗਾ to become one of the largest economies in the world by the end of the decade ਕੁਝ ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ। how does this allegation, these accusations, किस तरह उस चीज़ उते उस growth दे path उते एक अड़चन पाते एक प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट करते हैं एंड खास करके जो अडानी ग्रुप की गल आती है भावें साडे लई ये एक इंडियंस लई एक अंडरस्टूड थिंग हैगी दैट या दे ग्रोन किते ना किते तां हेरा फेरी कित्ती होनी है दाल दे विच माड़ा मोटा तां काला हुंदा ही है बट फॉर दिस रिपोर्ट टू पब्लिश एक डिटेल कि किस तरह वो हेरा फेरी कैरी आउट की गई है इट इज़ अ बिग डील इट इज़ अ वेरी बिग डील इस पूरी सिचुएशन ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣ ਲਈ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਰਿਪੋर्ट ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਹੈ ਹਿੰਡਨਬਰਗ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਹੈ ਕੌਣ ਕੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੋਟੀਵੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਐਕਸਪੈਕਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਅਡਾਨੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਦਾ ਫਿਊਚਰ ਪਲੇ ਆਊਟ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਇਸ ਰਿਪੋर्ट ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦੇਣ ਲਈ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਐਕਸਪਰਟ ਗੈਸਟ ਜੁੜ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜੁੜੇ ਰਹੋ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ ਇਸ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਫੋਲੋ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਐਂਡ ਦ ਮੋਰ ਡੇਜ਼ ਦੈਟ ਗੋ ਔਨ ਦ ਮੋਰ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਇਟ ਬਿਕਮਸ ਬਟ ਰੀਅਲੀ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਪੁਰਾਣੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਫਰਾਡਸ ਅਤੇ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੀ ਐਕਿਊਜ਼ੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਬਟ ਐਤਕੀ ਅਡਾਨੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਨੂੰ ਅਕਿਊਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਫਰਮ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਸ਼ਾਰਟ ਸੈਲਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ these are some pretty complicated allegations and ਜਿਸ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਇਹ ਫਰਾਡ ਦੀ ਐਕਿਊਜ਼ੇਸ਼ਨ ਬਣਾਈ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣ ਲਈ ਇੱਕ ਸ਼ਾਰਟ ਸੇਲ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣ ਲਈ ਇਨ ਸਾਰੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਲਓ ਹਾਈ ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣ ਲਈ ਅੱਜ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਇਸ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੈਸਟ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਏਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਐਕਸਪਰਟੀਜ਼ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹੈ ਐਂਡ ਹੀ ਇਜ਼ ਗੋਇੰ ਟੂ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਡਾਊਨ ਦਿਸ ਹੋਲ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਫॉर ਅਸ ਸੋ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਜੁਆਇਨ ਮੀ ਇਨ ਵੈਲਕਮਿੰਗ ਆਰ ਗੈਸਟ ਫॉर ਟੁਨਾਈਟ ਇੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਆਨੰਦ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਇੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ
Sat Shri Akal ji, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on the show, Inderji. Obviously, your background as a business financial advisor, a private wealth advisor, and someone who keeps close tabs on exactly these kind of stories as a matter of your day-to-day. I'm so glad ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜ ਕੇ hopefully ਥੋੜੇ ਜਿਹੇ simple ਸ਼ਬਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ you know, we understand, full disclaimer, that there are certain things ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ comment ਕਰ ਪਾਓਗੇ due to your professional capacity, but as much of a personal opinion as you can share, we appreciate it. So, sab to pehle, Inderji, you know, the word Hidenburg, of course, is a very familiar term for history majors. But finance world de vich, Hidenburg Research is a fairly new entity. But it's not exactly a think tank or a research group or some kind of, you know, group of academics or educational professionals. It's a finance entity, right? So, sab to pehle, Inderji,
Yes.
let's start with Hidenburg, right? What is
Sure.
Hidenburg Research?
So, Hidenburg Research is an investment research firm with a focus on activist short selling. It was actually only founded about 5-6 years ago. It's headquartered in New York City. They actually named themselves after the 1937 Hindenburg disaster, which they actually characterize as a human-made avoidable disaster. So I guess they're trying to really be using their name, and there's actually several other companies who also are in this line of work. And they typically pick names that are synonymous with bad things, I guess. So the firm actually generates public reports from their website that allege corporate fraud, malfeasance, etc. They've actually only had, as far as on a large scale, about 5 or 6 companies over the last 5 or 6 years, but they've been right. Unfortunately, I cannot name those companies at this time, but they've been right so far. These reports also feature defenses of the practice of short selling. Short selling actually is the process by which companies make money if the stock goes down. And it's actually a very important part of the overall stock market itself. So again, they are a small research firm. They do their own research using public reports, and so far they've been somewhat accurate.
Inderji, I'm so glad you mentioned this term short selling because that is at the key of this whole story, right? And jo sade darshak Hollywood movies de naal familiar han, maybe they've seen some movies about this. The Big Short is a really good one, Academy nominated, kuch saal na pehle nikli si. So, you know, you mentioned what short selling is, and I really appreciate कि तुसी किन्नी सादगी दे नाल इन्हू दस्या कि short selling basically, if I oversimplify it, is ਜਦੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਟਾਕ ਜਦੋਂ ਡੁੱਬਦਾ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਦਾ ਸਟਾਕ ਡੁੱਬਦਾ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਹ ਪੈਸੇ ਕਮਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੈ so this is a little bit of a reverse thing than what you want to see in the markets or in the stock market. What motivations ਕੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ opinion ਕੀ motivations ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਸੀ of a short seller such as Hidenburg research to conduct investigations like this? Are they in it to make a profit as well? Because agar eho ji investigation de naal kisi vadde conglomerate da entity da stock dubda hai like the Adani stock did once this report broke, do they stand to benefit?
So short selling has been around for over 100 years. It's actually a great way to provide a check and balance in the market, because if you couldn't short something, ultimately everything would just continue to go up and you would form bubbles that we've never seen. We kind of saw it during the Great Depression, somewhat saw it in 2008, 2009 during the Great Recession here in the US. So it's a very important function because it actually forces not only long sellers, but as well short sellers to actually keep an eye on what's happening. So if Hidenburg Research is a research firm, they make money when the stock goes down. So naturally, their motivation would be well, their first motivation is to bring information to the public for the benefit of the public. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, the world drives on money. So they're going to try to make money on this. And how would they do that is, once they've done their research, and by the way, they did about 2 years of research on this company. They released their report. They are already probably short that company before they release that report, or about to be. And depending on what type of firm, what type of investment advice they're selling. And their goal is is obviously for that company to clean up its finances. That's very important.
Of course.
Clean up its reporting, and then ultimately be better for everybody involved. If companies, and again, we're not forgetting the name Adani and any other company like that, without companies like Hidenburg, there's actually another company called Muddy Waters, there would really be no checks and balances other than the SEC here in the US and the SEBI over in India.
Inderji, I'm so glad you said checks and balances, and ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, and just so ਸਾਡੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਲਈ ਇੱਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਮੈਮਰੀ ਜੋਗ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਕੁਝ ਮੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਹਾਂ. You're talking about short sellers, and yes, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ motivations ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ, ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਦਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਇੰਨੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਕੋਈ ਅੰਡਰਟੇਕਿੰਗ ਲਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਏ, ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਡਾਨੀ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕरें. ਇਸ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਦੇ 413 ਪੇਜਸ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਅਲੈਜ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ. But I want to tell people, as far as checks and balances are concerned, short sellers were responsible to exposing major market frauds like Enron back in 2001. And Enron de naal assi sare familiar han. Enron di bhi kuch eho jihi kahani sigi. And we're talking about something similar now with the Adanis. Inderji, I want to talk to you about specifically what it was that they were accused of in general terms once again. It takes a break landa sama aa raha hai. Inderji, sade naal is tarah jude raho. Viewers, tusi bhi jude raho. Is explosive 400 pages ਦੀ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਡਾਨੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਅਕਿਊਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਫਰਾਡ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਲੈਜ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੋਰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਉਸ ਪਾਰ. The largest con in corporate history. ਇਹ ਲਫ਼ਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ research firm, the Hidenburg Research Group, has accused one of the largest conglomerates in the world right now, the Adani Group, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ profits ਕੁਝ 2 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿੰਨੇ hundreds of percentage points jump ਕੀਤੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ net worth jump ਕੀਤੀ. In fact, Adani de tusi keh lo karte dharte became the richest men in the world. But ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਜੋ growth ਹੈਗੀ ਇਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇੱਕ allegation ਲਗਾਉਣ ਵਾਲੀ Hidenburg research ਜੋ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ short seller ਹੈਗੇ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਕਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕੀ specifications ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਇਸ 400 pages ਦੀ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਥੋੜੇ ਜਿਹੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਲੈਵਲ ਤੇ ਸਮਝਣ ਲਈ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹਨ ਇੱਕ financial advisor wealth management expert ਇੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਆਨੰਦ ਜੀ ਇੰਦਰ ਜੀ you work closely when it comes to growing private wealth. When it comes to advising people on corporate and business financial matters. Generally speaking, किस तरह दी allegations, की वड्डी चीज़ां दे accusations Adani Group दे खिलाफ रखियां गईयां इस रिपोर्ट दे विच?
So, excellent question. Adani Group is a very large conglomerate. They have approximately 38 shell companies throughout the world, many of which are controlled by Vinod Adani. Many of the officers of the company are actually family members. I think 8 out of 22 or 8 out of 23 are actually family members. Mm-hmm. So the challenge here is you have a very, very complicated company with multiple revenue streams, multiple expenses throughout. And the accusations are that, very similar, unfortunately, to Enron back in the day, is that they are recording revenue between each firm as revenue for coming from outside the firm. So in other words, if I'm loaning money to somebody, or if I'm actually giving money to my wife, for argument's sake, she's recording it as income, whereas really it's not income. I'm actually just giving her money from my side to her side, one pocket to the other pocket.
Gee.
The other concern is that the audit companies are actually run by very small companies. These are, in fact, Adani Total Gas, the audit company, is a small company with no website, 4 partners, 11 employees.
Wow.
Many of them which are sub 25 years of age. Right?
Okay.
Auditing is a very, very unique profession. It takes a lot of experience, a lot of hard work.
Gee.
I'm not saying that these young men are not intelligent. I'm sure they are. But to be auditing a multi-billion-dollar company at that age and signing off on these reports, it leaves some room for concern. The other issue is that there seems to be an incredible amount of debt that is some that's been recognized and some that is not. So Hidenburg has gone into great depths into looking into the financials, all public records. So now they've interviewed former employees, former business partners, etc., and this is where they come up with. One of the things that Adani Group has stated is that they didn't come to them directly, not that they would even provide the information probably, but that a lot of this information is hearsay. That they're getting this from employees who were fired, for example. So they're not giving great information.
Yep.
So you've got multiple things happening. I think the biggest challenges typically is that the board is controlled by the family. And it's a publicly traded company, and it really does leave some room for concern.
It's very interesting that you know, we're talking, I really like this, जो तुसी एक comparison किता है कि एक जेब तो दूजी जेब च पैसा पा के एक कहना कि मैनू बाहरों पैसा मिले एक किस्म दा, if we have to once again oversimplify, that's what's happening, right? Before we talk about the decline, which has happened in the last few weeks, let's talk about the growth, right? पिछले 2 सालां दे विच इस group दी किन्नी hundreds of percentage points growth हुई. Is that even in an extreme scenario, Inderji, in your experience, is that normal? Does that happen in genuine scenarios without some shady business going on? कि एक entity दी 800% growth 2 या 3 सालां दे विच होए. I mean, the kind of you know, upward climb Gautam Adani even saw in the last few years, becoming one of the richest men in the world, the richest man at one point. Is that normal, that kind of growth?
So in the last 5 years, prior to January 24th, this company had grown the stock prices of the main company and the other 7 associated companies by about 2,500%. That's unusual unless you're a very small outfit. When you're a mature company like this company, that's very rare to get that type of growth, unless you're doing something, either growing the business by virtue of acquiring other businesses, what have you. So it gives reason to look underneath the hood. It doesn't mean that they were doing anything wrong, but it certainly gives reason to look under the hood when something has grown that quickly in such a short period of time.
Right. It's almost interesting that research but I guess it's like you said, it took Hidenburg Research Group 2 years to conduct all of this research. The report is practically a small textbook on what took place, right? So I want to talk about what's happened since, right? Because ਜਦੋਂ ਤੋਂ ਇਹ report break ਹੋਈ ਹੈ, I mean, there has been backlash, there has been nationalist sentiment that's been stoked, and ਉਹਦਾ ਵੀ ਜਵਾਬ Hidenburg ਨੇ ਦਿੱਤਾ. There's a lot of things that have happened, but the most significant is, of course, the movement of that stock price. So I want to talk about the decline that we've seen, and if that is natural as well, and what ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਐਕਸਪੈਕਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ to happen to this huge group, this huge entity, a whale in the market. ਇੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਮਾਂ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ, ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਰਹੋ, ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਜੁੜੇ ਰਹੋ। ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਫਿਊਚਰ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਅਡਾਨੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਦਾ? Will this even affect them? ਇਹਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ। ब्रेक तो बाद मुड़ हाजिर हैं, तुसी वेख रहे हो प्रोग्राम अज दा मुद्दा। अज असी गल कर रहे हैं अडानी ग्रुप, the alleged fraud, the largest con in corporate history। एक कहा जा रहा है ना कि सिर्फ हिंडनबर्ग रिसर्च ग्रुप वालों जिन्होंने ये इन्वेस्टिगेशन की रिपोर्ट कर दी, but by a lot of industry experts जो कि उस रिसर्च नूं हुण वेरीफाई कर रहे, उस सबूत नूं वेख रहे हैं। ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣ ਲਈ ਐਂਡ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਥੋੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਗੈਸਟ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਇੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਆਨੰਦ ਜੀ। ਇੰਦਰ ਜੀ, it's interesting ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇਸ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਦੀ, ਅਡਾਨੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਦੀ growth हुई पिछले कुछ सालों दे विच, and while like you said कुछ scenarios दे विच एहो जी growth हो सकती है, genuinely speaking, इस scenario दे विच it's a little unlikely considering जिस तरह तुसी कह that they were a mature outfit. This is not some fancy new tech startup जो overnight skyrocket करके एकदम जितना ना viral होके इस तरह दी growth लेके आए. They've been around for a while, and they're doing a lot of things, right? It's easy to now understand with your wonderful metaphor that you use, the comparison, कि अगर तुसी आप दे परिवार दे विच किसी नू पैसे दे रहे हो, अपनी बीवी नू पैसे दे रहे हो, वो तुहाडी household income नहीं हैगी, it's just money moving around the house. And so it would make sense that Adani Group दी किन्नी companies हैगियां, कई इन्हां नू shell companies भी कह रहे हैं. Hidenburg certainly alleges that these are shell companies जिन्हां दी कोई presence नहीं हैगी, ना online presence, ना physical presence, ना employee presence. There's general stock photos on the websites of these companies. They exist in name only, and शायद उन्हां नू इस ही fraud ਲਈ इस्तेमाल किया जा रहा है. So what lies ahead, right? Because India is on track to be one of the largest economies by the end of the decade. It is still aggressively growing. Adani is aggressively growing. He has the support, domestically speaking. India de vich is group lay na ke sirf politically but publicly काफी support हैगी. What do you think will be the true impact of Hidenburg Research's report on the future of the Adani Group?
Oh boy, that's an excellent question. I think that what will probably happen from this, and similar to the SEC here, India has something called the SEBI. That's their Securities Exchange Board of India, which kind of regulates these types of entities. I think they'll certainly start to look at what's under the hood to determine if these reports are real. If they turn out to be real, people need to be fined. People may need to go to jail, potentially. because these are very big accusations. And we're talking about a lot of money and people making trading decisions, investing decisions based on the information that the group is providing them. Now, that being said, it's not the worst thing in the world, because when things like this happen, similar to Enron or similar to Bernie Madoff here in the U.S., or the European banks money laundering scandal back just a few years ago, rules and regulations get tighter, they get better, so that these things don't happen again. So in the short term, it certainly, obviously, it's had an impact on the group. Many of their business partners will question what's happening, and they're going to have to make good on it. For example, I believe Adani Group is one of the largest logistics companies in India. So all of their business partners who are doing online selling are going to probably be speaking with them and saying, hey guys, what's happening? Is this real or not? Are you still able to service our needs? Are you still able to deliver our products for us? So that's in the short term. And the longer term, it will be good, maybe not for Mr. Adani, but it will certainly be good for business across the country.
So that's a really optimistic way to put it, right? That khas karke India le, that is gearing and certainly on track to become a economic powerhouse and compete with the current superpowers of the world. This may be a blessing in disguise, but what about Adani personally, right? Just to see some of these stockholders, these partnerships that exist currently, ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਵਾਲ ਉਠਣਗੇ, how does the stock move in the short term? Can we expect it to keep declining? ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਮਹੀਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, what does the Adani stock do, in your opinion?
Well, I think it probably continues to be very volatile in the near term, I think, based on whatever information continues to get either leaked out or published. So, for example, the Adani Group published, Hidenburg's research report was about 100 pages. Adani Group's rebuttal was 413 pages, which is kind of interesting. Hidenburg Research actually posed to them about 85, 88 questions, something to that effect. Just answer these questions for us and we'll walk away. If you can answer them, then no problem. But they have yet to answer them as far as I know. So the interesting thing is that Mr. Adani is still a pioneer in the business world. Whatever happened, if it happened, he'll probably be fine. I think he'll still be better than most of us financially. The challenge will be, of course, in moving forward. I think I go back to checks and balances, which is very important. SEBI will have to, assuming that some of these things are true, or even partially true, they're going to have to get a little bit tighter with not only this company, but almost any large company, large conglomerate, in the country, because that's what will make things better. That is what will make people trust the markets again. If you go back into the early 90s, and you're a little too young for this, but there was a gentleman involved in a stock scandal. His name, pardon me. Was Harshad Mehta. And he was involved in at the time, this is 1992, $1.3 billion stock scandal.
Wow.
I don't think anyone in India wanted to be part of the stock market after that for a decade or more. But what it did do was SEBI got involved. They put in a lot more rules and regulations around this, and that got people comfortable again. And, unfortunately, these things happen because there's always somebody that feels like they can get away with it, and of course, they want to make money.
Inderji, there was a very famous line in the United States about 20 years ago. Folks will know, too big to fail, right? So regarding this Adani scandal, I guess in closing, which side do you put them on? Are they on the too big to fail side, or you think that this is something that will severely impact them and they will have to change how they do business going forward?
Excellent question. I think that, again, we're assuming that all the allegations are true at this point. If they are, they certainly have to change the way they do business, and they're going to have to start from scratch, from the bottom up, because they have to put the trust back into the people. And that could be anything from bringing in outside executives to run the company, opening up their books to the SEBI when requested. The challenge here, unfortunately, is that the SEBI seems to have possibly looked the other way. There have been multiple conglomerates in India over the years that have been able to keep things quiet. They've been able to put journalists away for a period of time or quiet them down, which is dangerous overall. So things will have to change, I think, regardless, assuming that these allegations are true. If they're not true, they'll have a big lawsuit on their hands against Hidenburg Research.
I mean, in any case, पूरी दुनिया दी नज़रां इस वेले ना कि सिर्फ India but its Indian conglomerate उत्ते and the rules and regulations that India claims to adhere by इन सारी चीज़ां उत्ते टिकियां हुई हैं. खास करके in the United States, I believe they're watching it very, very closely now. But in any case, Inderji, I feel like this is, like you said before, just the tip of the iceberg, right? Is report that inne, flashy तरीके दे नाल release होना, all of the controversy it's caused on social media, and the nationalist sentiments it's stoked. In चीज़ां नूं लैके, I don't doubt that there will be more to discuss in the coming days and weeks about this story. So, tusi please side nal fir aake judo. Would love to have you back. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Inder Singh Anand, the business financial advisor. Have a good rest of your evening. Sat Sri Akal.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ji. Once again, this is extraordinary research, and eho je claims, jo allegations Adani Group de khilaf rakhiyan gayiyan, they may very well change the course of India's economic path forward. Adani जो कि ना कि सिर्फ इंडिया दे विच इन्ने वड्डे लेवल ते बट पूरी दुनिया दे विच छा के एक किस्म दे एग्जिस्ट कर रहे इस वेले, शायद उन्हां लई फ्यूचर थोड़ा जिहा डिफरेंट होए, खास करके जदों असी इन एलिगेशंस बारे सोचदे हां. Excellent research by Hidenburg Research Group, जिन्हां ने इस 100 कुछ पेजेस दे विच इन्नी डिटेल जानकारी रखी है. Once again, these are allegations. कुछ experts कह रहे हैं कि इस सबूत सच दे नाल जुड़िया होया है. Of course, Adani Group दा जो जवाब 400 पेजेस दा जो सीगा ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ कुछ होर स्टोरी दसी ਜਾਂਦੀ है. इस मुद्दे ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਵਰੇਜ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਰੀ ਰੱਖਾਂਗੇ. ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਸਾਡੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਦੇ ਕੋਈ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ, ਕਮੈਂਟਸ, ਕੰਸਰਨਸ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲਿਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ info@justbroadcasting.com, aashmeeta@justbroadcasting.com. ਹੁਣ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਦਿਓ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ. ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ.